Hi, this is Zach, Pornowound. Today I'll be taking a look at the Orient Star Classic. This is a fairly new offering from Orient Star USA, and it's a very cool watch with clearly vintage styling that I think we were really interested in because we really loved the Orient Bambino. It was probably one of our favorite watches we reviewed last year. Had a very cool vintage look, and this kind of takes it. It's a little bit of a fancier version with some interesting added complications, such as a power reserve, and it's also dropped smaller at 38.5 millimeters wide, which was something that I think the Bambino at 40.5 millimeters wide, was a touch large perhaps. So this gets a lot of those aesthetic points across and is a different watch from a slightly higher grade of Orient. So this watch, the MSRP is $690, but with a 30% off coupon code, which there are many, it'll cost you around $483. So let's take a closer look now. The case of the Orient Star Classic measures 38.5 diameter, 40 millimeters lug to lug, 20 millimeter lug width, and about 13 millimeters thick, and that's including the dome of the crystal here. The case design is, it kind of very much speaks to this kind of vintage dress style. I think it's really nicely proportioned as a contemporary dress watch, and it definitely also, comes across as feeling a little bit like a retro style piece as well. The case design is very simple. You have this kind of polished bezel here. The tops of the lugs are then actually brushed a little bit, giving a slightly different sheen. The lugs are fairly small and thin. I think that's kind of in keeping with the style of the watch and works quite nicely. Looking at the watch from the side, it's a very thin kind of profile here, all polished. Clearly the star here is this very large domed mineral crystal, which I think is really nice, obviously meant to emulate the kind of like acrylic domes of vintage watches, and I think it does a really nice job, and being mineral crystal is actually a little more scratch resistant than an acrylic. Looking at the crown now here, you have this Orient Star sign crown. It's a nicely designed little crown. It has some kind of interesting shape to it that measures 6.5 millimeters in diameter, about 3.5 millimeters deep, so it's fairly graspable. The case side here is actually flattened a little bit, letting the crown fit in there nicely, which is just a nice little detail. Nice to see that they, made those little things a little bit better. The movement is actually hand windable, so you might find yourself turning this from time to time. Flipping the watch over now, we'll show you this in better detail in a moment, but it does have a display case back in which you can see the automatic Orient movement in there, which it does have some decoration, which is nice, and I think is a little bit unique to the Orient Star line, which this is a part of. So yeah, overall, it's just this really nicely designed kind of vintage style case that, I think suits the watch very well. The dial of the Orient Star Classic is really quite spectacular. I think they achieved a lot for a watch in this price category. So it has they call this one the white version. There is a black dial, but it really is more of a kind of a pearlescent silver, and it has a sunburst pattern going out from the center. So as you move it in the light, you can see how it kind of reflects light interestingly, and it has kind of a metallic sheen to it. The whole dial itself is actually domed as well, so there's a little bit more of kind of an interesting play towards the edge here, which is also then further emphasized by the dome mineral crystal. So it's just a lot more dynamic than a flat dial. So now you have the kind of one primary index here, really, consisting of these applied triangular silver markers. They're very long and kind of cool looking, kind of really reaching into the center. I think they really have kind of a 50s, 60s feel, which I really like. Clearly at 12 it has this kind of more of a kind of double marker just to distinguish it. And then in between for the individual minutes and seconds are just little black dashes. So you do have a reference for the individual minutes, which is nice, making actually just a very functional dial as well. Now the real standout feature here that you might notice is that clearly right below 12 there is a power reserve. That is, something that is unique to some of these watches. This makes it, I think, very different than like the Orient Bambino, let's say. I really love having a power reserve. It's a really nice and kind of functional complication. Right now, it's telling us that we have about 25 hours of power. As you wind the watch or, move around, you can see that needle slightly going up. And that little index here is just printed on kind of a applied arc that has a little bit of texturing. It's a really nice detail. It's functional. It's aesthetically pleasing. I think it's really well executed. Then at 3 here you have a date window. It's lined with a little silver line. That's a black date on a white disc. Once again, just functional and simple. And then the other really cool thing about this dial that I think is unique to this watch in particular is the flame blue steel hands. So you have these big Dauphine hands here that you know, have this beautiful dark blue color that reflect the light in interesting ways, and they use the blue then also in the seconds, as well as this little power meter indicator here. You know, and I think it's kind of very dramatic looking. At first I almost thought it was too much, but as I've worn the watch a little bit, I've really grown to like it. It gives it a very unique personality. Yeah, the only other interesting detail then is just, of course, the Orient Star logo here. The Orient Star logo being a little different than the Orient logo, which has that kind of shield with little lions. This is a simpler kind of oval with an S shape in it. Yeah, overall, I think it's a really elegant, really attractive dial that, you know, for a watch that's $483, I mean, I don't know what else you can ask for. Powering the Orient Star Classic is the 40N52 caliber by Orient. This is a Japanese-made automatic movement. It features 22 joules, a frequency of 21,600 beats per hour, hacking seconds, hand winding, power reserve. But before we show you how it kind of operates, just want to show you the movement itself. Usually Orient's movements are fairly undecorated. This one is a little bit more special. It is part of the Orient Star line. I think that's part of what distinguishes it, which also frankly raises the prices of these watches a bit. But regardless, for a watch under $500, this is really quite nice. So you have the kind of Côte de Genève rotor here. The rotor itself is a little bit more interesting looking with this kind of flared design and these triangular cutouts, and then this gold tone Orient Star logo on there. And then on the movement itself, and it might be a little tricky to see, but as I move it around, you might see in the light, there's a bit of a perlage pattern going on the plate here. You know, like I said, we always love to see the movement inside, and even more so when it's decorated. And this is minimally decorated, but it is still quite nice looking. So I'm flipping the watch over, just taking a look, you know, obviously at the dial. The movement itself, you know, operates pretty normally. Pull the crown out, one stop, turn it towards you to change the date. I did notice that the date actually changes really quickly, so you barely have to turn it at all for it to snap to the next date, which is just an interesting little facet about this design. Pushing it in and pulling it out all the way now. You can see that the second hand stops. It is hacking seconds, and then, you know, you can adjust the time in this position. And like I mentioned before when we're talking about the dial, there is power reserve here, which is just a very cool feature. And, you know, with the hand winding, you can watch that go up quite easily. So, you know, for a watch that's $483, I think this is a really, really nice movement to have. On the wrist, the Orient Star Classic is really kind of wonderful to wear. The 38.5 millimeter size, you know, I think fits really comfortably. It's definitely on the smaller size for a contemporary watch, but I think it's just so appropriate for a watch this style that, you know, it just works terrifically. I have a 7-inch wrist here, so you can see it fits me well. You know, I think it would fit larger wrists pretty well too, you know, though it might start to get a little bit small, but once again, this is still large for what a vintage watch would be, so I think it, you know, within the style, it's quite appropriate. The looks of the watch are really, you know, they're really great. They really pop out. The blue Dauphine hands, you know, those really jump off the dial, giving the watch kind of a little bit more of a, you know, I don't know, just a little bit more of a special look, a little bit more of a unique look. And though the watch is quite dressy, I think, you know, it's also just totally easy to wear as a casual watch because, you know, it's not ornate or really opulent. There's nothing really ostentatious about it at all. It's just kind of a nice looking watch with a vintage style. Yeah, so, you know, I think it's really nice. You can wear it with just about anything. And then aesthetically, yeah, it's just so on the mark. Look at the bracelet now that this comes on. You know, it's a steel bracelet that actually has solid end links. I know that a lot of the Orients actually have folded end links. You know, it's a 3-link style bracelet. It's pretty decent. It's got a little bit of like a wobble to it. The finishing is interesting though. So it has a brushed finish with then these lines of polished steel going down, which just kind of dress it up a little bit. Then of course you have the little deployment clasp here, and it's, you know, got a 2-button style, so it just pops open. Actually might have put it on backwards here, but you can see how it works. And the clasp itself is quite nice. It's very streamlined with a brushed surface here, an Orient Star logo, and then you know, kind of a polished bevel on the sides. Yeah, so, you know, overall I think really nice package, really great look to the watch. That, you know, it's a versatile design, so this could really just pop into your collection and easily be worn. One kind of interesting thing about the Orient Star line is that they come in a much more robust packaging. So this box you see here is kind of a very, very solid box that is, it looks leather, but it actually has a kind of a rubberized texture to it. It's a really, really sturdy box. It's kind of, you know, really feels like it very much protects the watch. You know, opening it up, then you can see the watch inside. Once again, the whole interior has this kind of faux leather, rubberized texture. It's a really nice box that I honestly, you could definitely keep around. It's much more solid than your average kind of cardboard box that I think the Orients, usually come in. Yeah, so just kind of wrapping up, I think the Orient Star Classic is a really great kind of step up from the Bambino within the Orient line. Since it's an Orient Star, it has some of these kind of special features of a slightly more decorated movement and a power reserve. But to me, the real standout is that aesthetically, it's got these blue Delphine hands, and it's a little bit smaller at 38.5. So if the Bambino really tempted you, but you want something, that's maybe a little step up, a little bit fancier, I think this is a really great watch. This is also just, unto itself, a really nice watch to have in your collection for something that's vintage styled, affordable, and can kind of go with anything. The watch is also available with a black dial and all silver hands and markers, so that option is also, I'm sure, quite attractive. Do particularly like the blue on silver aesthetic here, though. So please read the full review at Warner Wound. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. Thank you.